So every year, companies like Dell, HP, and Asus release a new version of their laptop with the latest generation of Intel Core processors. It's just a simple little way of making sure the laptops are up to date without having to do a total redesign every year. And as we all know, Apple did this recently with their MacBook Pros, but somehow they totally have flubbed what could have been a really great opportunity to reach out to people who have been kind of burned by the latest MacBook Pro. And there's a lot of people that fall into that camp. So here are 3 reasons why the way Apple has handled this update has been kind of a disaster. We knew there was something fishy about this year's MacBook Pro right when we saw the listing, because the update only applies to $1,800 models and up, including the 15-inch MacBook Pro. Everything below that has been completely left off the update. So the $1,300 starting price model all the way up to the $1,800 model, they don't get the update. They're still left on previous generation Intel processors. And that really sucks, especially for people like me who don't really want to pay a premium for the touch bar, but rather use the standard non-touch bar version. I really don't want to see these lower end MacBook Pros have the same problem that the MacBook Air has had for years, in which case Apple is selling really an out-of-date laptop at full price simply because they know that people will buy them because they're the cheapest model. It's true that Apple could be making room for a new MacBook later this year, as some of the rumors have said, but that really doesn't change the fact that people buying a Mac Pro today, especially these cheaper versions, are really buying an out-of-date computer. So despite the lack of good entry-level options, we were really excited actually to see Apple bring these 8th generation Core i9 processors to the 15-inch MacBook Pro. These are really powerful processors that we've seen do really well in other laptops that we've reviewed so far. But even in this case, Apple has sort of messed things up. There have been mixed reports, but basically because the 15-inch MacBook Pro uses the same chassis as it did before, it's not really able to properly handle these new, really powerful Core i9 chips. Essentially what you're going to see is performance that's throttled or held back in really intense loads like in video rendering or other things that professional users would buy this laptop to do. And that's really a shame because this could have been a great opportunity, again, for Apple to reach back to those pro users and bring them back into the Apple ecosystem. And instead, it seems like Apple has kind of taken the easy route and just hoped nobody would notice. And lastly, we get to the keyboard. The admission that Apple has made a mistake and that there's been a problem with these MacBook Pro keyboards has been a slow and painful process to watch. It came to a head when Apple finally announced that it would provide free repairs and replacements for these sticky keyboards back in May. In the 2018 update, Apple has included what it calls the 3rd generation butterfly mechanism. When first announced, we assumed Apple had fixed the problem that had plagued the previous generation of keyboards, but instead, Apple was totally silent on the issue. The initial response from Apple was that there was no new engineering tweaks to address the sticky key issue, while also not being covered under the new repair program. It was only once people started actually ripping these things open and showing that there was a new silicone membrane installed under each key did Apple finally go back on its previous statement and admit that its new keyboard did actually have anti-debris protection. It really just doesn't make sense to me why Apple wouldn't just tell people that it fixed the keyboard, that it fixed this problem that these MacBook Pros have had. The only thing I can figure is that Apple is trying to save face and that they're afraid to admit that they actually made an engineering mistake on these MacBook Pros. Don't get me wrong, these new MacBook Pros are not bad in themselves. They can be a really great update over last year's actually, as long as you find the right configuration for what you are trying to do. But here's the thing. Clarity in branding is something that Apple has always been really good at. It's what has set them apart over the years. But the Apple of today, this new Apple, seems to be constantly making mistakes in messaging, branding, product differentiation, and even reliability. And the new MacBook Pros, they're not an exception, they're the new normal. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. What do you think of these new MacBook Pros? Are you gonna get one? And which one are you gonna get? And if you want to check out more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and click on one of the videos to my right to see more.